One of the hottest videos among the younger set isn't the latest tune from Hannah Montana or the Jonas Brothers. It's this.
Have you ever wondered where all the stuff we buy comes from and where it goes when we throw it out?
The Story of Stuff is a lively, short, illustrated lecture about how we're trashing the planet, kind of a mini version of An Inconvenient Truth without Al Gore.
Again, and we're on this crazy work, watch, spend treadmill, and we could just stop.
The guide is former Greenpeace activist Annie Leonard, and she explains the impact of all the material things we buy, consume, and throw away, our stuff.
The waste coming out of our houses is just the tip of the iceberg. For every one garbage can of waste you put out on the curb, 70 garbage cans of waste were made upstream just to make the junk in that one garbage can you put out on the curb.
This straight talk about stuff has become a phenomenon in schools across the country, embraced by kids and teachers alike who think that when it comes to the environment, curricula and textbooks are hopelessly out of date. One school board in Missoula, Montana, however, recently banned the video after a parent complained that it was anti-capitalist. It's complicated, this stuff, so complex and interconnected that my next guest says the idea of green jobs, green buildings, green energy, a green economy is, quote, a mirage. Exactly what does he mean? Well, he's here to explain. Daniel Goleman is a former science reporter for the New York Times, twice nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, and recipient of the American Psychological Association's Lifetime Achievement Award. His first book, Emotional Intelligence, sold more than 5 million copies worldwide. The second of a trilogy was Social Intelligence, and now comes his latest, Ecological Intelligence, subtitled How Knowing the Hidden Impacts of What We Buy Can Change Everything. That particular concept of Daniel Goleman's recently was celebrated by Time magazine as one of 10 ideas changing the world right now. Daniel Goleman, welcome to the Journal.
It's such a pleasure to be with you, Bill.
When I finished your book, I wrote down what I took to be your message. Here it is. The things we buy and use come usually with a hidden price tag.
That's right.
And if we don't read that hidden price tag, our children and grandchildren face a disaster. Fair enough?
I think that's well put. The sad fact is that what we see in the store, what we put in our homes, what we use every day, all those objects, all those friendly products that we're so used to, has a hidden legacy, which has to do with their impacts on the environment, on our health, on ecosystems, on the people that made them, that starts from the moment that they start to extract the ingredients, manufacture, through transport, through use, disposal. At every stage in that progression over the life cycle of a product, there's a new methodology. It's called life cycle assessment.
But what's new about this? Because we've all been taught or learned by osmosis that each of us leaves a carbon footprint on the sands of time, and we know there are consequences to our presence here. So what's new about what...
Bill, I think there are two things that are new. One is that life cycle assessment goes way beyond carbon footprint. At any given point, for example, a glass bottle, a glass jar, they analyze that, it's manufactured into 1,959 discrete steps. At every step of the way, there are myriad impacts on the environment, on health, on the people involved, and so on. So first, we have a vaster sense and a much more accurate sense of really what the impact is. And the second thing is, and this is the big breakthrough, that information is now available to you and me while we're shopping so that we can use it to make better decisions.
How so?
Well, there's a fabulous website called goodguide.com. And it summarizes, it draws in about 200 of these databases, and summarizes for us in 10 points. 10 is the best, 1 is the worst, how this product stacks up on its environmental, health, and social impacts compared to other products of its kind. What this does, Bill, is give us what's called radical transparency. Suddenly, we've all vaguely known things have carbon footprints. Now we can know exactly which is better.
But do you expect me to go to Pioneer Grocery Store at 74th and Columbus carrying my little good guide and stand there and thumb through it?
Well, here's the lovely thing. You only need to do it once. You take your shopping. Let's think about it. The things you buy every week, things you buy every month, they're probably the same. I know it's true for me. I buy the same brands week after week after week. Now you can check them out. You can compare them. Just take the 10 things you buy most often, spend 10 minutes on Good Guide, and you can upgrade your impacts.
We will link our audience to Good Guide, but when people go to Walmart, they go for one reason. They go looking for the lowest price, the best bargain. They're not thinking about what happened in China to produce this piece. They're not thinking about the trees the Walton family cut down to build this store. They're not even thinking about what the clerk who sells it to them is making. They're thinking about the lowest price.
Let me question the assumption behind your question. That is that better means more expensive. If you look at another website, Skin Deep, it rates personal care products in terms of chemicals of concern. You know, there are 50 ingredients in a bottle of shampoo. It looks at every one of those in a medical database. Does this chemical cause cancer in mice, for example? Then it ranks shampoos, hair products, lip gloss, whatever it is, in terms of how dangerous it might be and what's clearly the safest, or baby shampoo. And this allows us to make a decision based on what's better. But I looked at the 10 best shampoos and the 10 worst, and guess what? The most expensive shampoo by far is in the 10 worst. So you can't necessarily equate price with safety. The biggest consumer goods companies are already using life cycle assessment to look at their entire range of products, see what's their worst impact. One big company found that the worst thing they did for the environment was that their detergents required warm water when you washed. So what they do, they had their R&D folks produce a detergent that's just as good in cold water. So this thinking is catching on in companies. In fact, companies tend to be ahead of consumers on this.
So you are telling me that there's a market growing up for life cycle assessed products?
Well, I think it's a little different, Bill. What's happened with our products and things we buy is that we've had what's called in economics an asymmetry. That means that sellers know things buyers don't. We've just experienced a meltdown in the economy because there were toxic assets. And banks were buying things that they didn't realize what they were, and they were poisonous. Well, we're buying...
And they were selling them, too, the mortgages.
And they were selling them, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's been our condition now with the things we buy for our homes. We're buying, in a sense, toxic goods, as it were. Goods that have these environmental health impacts we have no idea. All of a sudden, and this is the big revolution, there's radical transparency. Because now consumers can know what's in a product. And, you know, if you use Good Guide, you can do two things that are spectacular. One is you can, in a single click, tell the company why you're not buying their brand anymore or why you are now buying their brand. This is very powerful information. You can also inform all your friends as to why you've just done that. As this information spreads virally, what's going to happen, and companies see this coming, is that this kind of ecological goodness is going to matter for market share. Points that I find very encouraging is a generational difference. You know, you and I grew up in an age where we loved plastics and we loved our consumer goods, and we never knew what the hidden impacts were. And we never knew that we should care that much. You know, Silent Spring was the beginning of what became the environmental movement. But young people, people who have grown up with the specter of global warming, are far more motivated to do whatever they can to preserve the world. And they're also far more sophisticated, certainly than me and perhaps than you, about social networking on the web, about Twitter and Facebook and so on, which I see as the engine which is going to drive the sharing of the knowledge that will create the shift that will make it not only feasible for companies, but actually essential for companies to do the right thing.
The swarm intelligence.
There you go.
It's a hopeful book, Ecological Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, How Knowing the Hidden Impacts of What We Buy Can Change Everything. Dan, thanks for being on the Journal.
You betcha. Pleasure.